Vivo's X-Fold processor switched from last generation's Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 to the Dimensity 9500, packed with a 7,000 mAh battery, given a 200-megapixel main camera, and also has what's claimed to be the strongest telephoto lens among foldables. Everyone is hyping it as an AI office productivity beast. But is that just empty talk, or is it actually good? Compared to the previous generation, what has changed? As usual, I'll mention all the shortcomings too. But since my testing time was limited, I can't cover every single detail. I hope this can serve as an early reference for your purchase decision. First, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you all so much. Let's start with the unboxing. A 100-watt charger, a small SIM ejector pin shaped like a balloon, and the X-Fold's SIM card tray. Here it is. This actually looks pretty nice. It's not that overly bright lake blue color. I think it looks quite good. This brand's shells have always been well made. Let's look at the crease and close it again. 3, 2, 1. Wow, look at that. This time there are 3 colors: Blue Cave, Silver Lake, and Deep Night. The naming still follows the brand's usual style. Honestly, I think this year's color is done beautifully. Definitely not that gaudy, overly glossy, plastic-looking kind of color. When the light is dim, it looks close to a deep, rotating blue, almost leaning toward black. But when the light is bright, that translucent quality really comes through, like sunlight shining through seawater. Very refined, and it holds up well over time. My recommended ranking would be blue, white, black. Of course, just me talking about it doesn't help. You should go to the store and touch the actual unit yourself. I think the real device looks noticeably better than photos. The back panel is glass, though the other 2 colors use a glass textured finish. The back panel has a strong, fine-grained glossiness, doesn't pick up fingerprints, and stays very clean. Compared side by side with the previous generation, its corner radius is rounder and larger now. I think it feels great in the hand. The glossy metal frame has become a matte metal frame. No fingerprints, no small scratches either, and overall it looks more angular or squared off. Unfolded, it's 4.8 millimeters thick. Folded, it's 9.9 millimeters, and it weighs 235 grams, noticeably chunkier than the last generation. Personally, I don't chase that extreme thin and light look in foldables, the trade-offs that come with being ultra-thin, you know what I mean. I care more about the actual usage experience. The hinge has a good damping feel. Opening and closing feels solid, with none of that loose, slippery sensation. Crease control is also somewhat better than the previous generation, though it's still just at a normal level. I don't think Vivo is specifically chasing a crease-free claim here either. The side buttons are unchanged from the previous generation. Solid, not loose. The speaker opening at the top has more holes now, and there are some minor adjustments at the bottom too. This time, compared to the last generation, the outer screen's aspect ratio has been made wider, giving it more of the look and feel of a regular flagship phone. Even if you've never used a foldable before and switched to this, you won't get that uncomfortable, stretched image feeling. The inner screen is 8.02 inches. The outer screen is 6.51 inches. The inner screen uses Samsung's M14 emissive material. The outer screen uses Q11, also the latest generation. But when you're using the outer screen versus the inner screen outdoors, the visual quality is basically at the same level. You won't get that jarring, blurry feeling when switching between inner and outer screens. Both screens have 5,000 nit local peak brightness, 424 ppi, and a 1 to 120 Hz adaptive refresh rate. I could see it clearly even shooting photos outdoors. I think these screen specs would hold up well even on a regular flagship, not just a foldable. Now for the camera. Let me keep this brief. Compared to the previous generation, the telephoto lens position has changed, and the flash has become 2 small units placed on the right side. The hardware given this time is genuinely generous, and in actual shooting, among foldables, it ranks in the first tier. As a result, the camera module thickness has naturally increased somewhat. Color reproduction shows clear improvement over the last generation. In native color mode, the sense of light, shadow, and atmosphere have all improved. But there's a small issue. Sometimes it overemphasizes the lighting effect, making photos look heavier than what you actually see in person, with shadow areas also coming out darker. So towards evening or when lighting isn't great, I'd suggest turning off the native lighting effect and shooting in vivid mode instead. It actually looks more pleasant. The same applies on overcast days. Native mode saturation feels a bit lacking, so vivid mode works better. Or you can try switching between filters yourself to find what you like. But compared to the previous generation, the improvement is clear. Highlight suppression is noticeably better, especially color accuracy for yellow tones, which is far more accurate than the last generation, almost matching what my own eyes actually see. And photos from this device genuinely have more texture or detail. The previous generation often produced images that looked comparatively flat. When you compare them side by side, you can clearly see this generation has much more depth and clarity. For portraits, I went to Beijing and shot photos of my good friend. Starting this year, Vivo's portrait mode places heavy emphasis on lighting and shadow, which also makes the overall image lean darker, completely gone that old soft, sweet, dreamy look. So if you don't like that heavily stylized, textured look, I'd recommend using the color film or cool white modes, which will make skin tones appear fairer and softer. Also, when shooting people in backlit or harsh lighting conditions, you can clearly see it working through its computational process, and once it finishes, the smoothing and retouching on faces gets noticeably heavier, sometimes to the point where it barely looks like the actual person. My suggestion would be to turn off all the default beauty filters. That helps a lot. If lighting is poor or it's nighttime, just turn on flash portrait mode directly. Though flash portrait mode has a bug too. Sometimes the flash just won't turn on, and you need to restart the phone to fix it. Lastly, about the periscope zoom lens. This brand has really pushed zoom capability across every model line, and I honestly never expected it would even come to a foldable. Coincidentally, around that time, I went to a multi-artist concert and my seat was practically outside the venue. I took quite a few photos. You can judge the results yourselves. Adding a physical add-on lens is definitely a lot better than not having one, no question. But you also have to understand, at that kind of distance, even divine intervention can't save the shot. For video recording, the previous generation X Fold only supported up to 4K 60 FPS. This time, it's been bumped straight up to 4K 120 FPS, and it also supports Dolby Vision. Both smoothness and dynamic range have improved noticeably. If you're filming fast-moving footage or plan to do slow-mo in post, you'll have a lot more room to work with. Selfie video also supports Dolby Vision, but note it's still capped at 1080p 30 FPS. So if you want high-quality selfie video, use the rear camera. After all, that's exactly what a foldable is meant for. That's one of its advantages. Now for a few things I think fall short. The built-in filters really aren't great on overcast days. They're fine when the weather's good, but on cloudy days, shooting with them actually looks worse than regular mode. The color palette tool works better in that case. But the color palette, portrait presets, and similar tools are all buried inside the post-editing section. You can't access them directly while shooting. I hope the brand can roll out an OTA update to bring these options directly into the Foldable's camera page. Note, while I was mid-edit on this video, they actually pushed an OTA update at 4 a.m. last night that added the color palette options directly in, so that's resolved now. Second, photos often come out slightly underexposed. Every time I shoot, I have to manually pull up the brightness. Shooting one photo, adjusting one photo. It gets tedious. I actually mentioned this in a previous video too. Could they add a one-dimensional brightness slider right on the camera screen? That would genuinely be very useful. Third, after taking a portrait shot, it still needs a moment to finish processing before you can review it. Fourth, there's an issue with the photography kit case design. The build quality is very good, and it even adds protection around the hinge so it doesn't feel loose anywhere either. But there's one problem. As you can see, only the telephoto lens is exposed through the case. The ultra-wide and main camera are directly blocked, and I have no idea what that hole on the left is for. If you put the case on beforehand, you literally can't take a main camera shot at all. If you go to a concert with the zoom lens attachment mounted and want to switch to wide angle for a full panoramic shot, you simply can't. Even the flash is covered. Look, the flash is right there, see? Compare that to their own Ultra model, which doesn't have this issue at all. I hope they improve this going forward, or at least sell a separate case in their official store that doesn't block the lenses. This really shouldn't happen. Honestly, I've reviewed a lot of Western phones, so I'm fairly picky about camera quality. But for the average person, this phone's camera capability is more than enough. The other day, I was at Chiang Mai Island shooting hot balloons quite a fair way away, and a passerby next to me remarked, "Wow, this phone is great. The image is so clear." At the concert, too, a woman sitting behind me, following the usual tradition, tapped me on the shoulder and asked what phone this was, saying how clear it looked. I feel like this happens at literally every concert I go to now. So yeah, it's genuinely quite good. Let me also show you some sample shots I've taken recently. It has dual speakers. I listened to the same song switching between two phones, and I think the difference is quite noticeable. The X Fold's previous generation sound was a bit thin and hollow. This generation overall sounds fuller and solid. I think the bass has more depth now. It doesn't feel as floaty as it felt before. Of course, this is just my own subjective impression from listening. You should judge for yourselves, too. Battery life is what I most want to praise this time. Honestly, it's a bit excessive in a good way. Let me show you screenshots of my actual usage over the past few days. With half Wi-Fi and half 5G usage, using both inner and outer screens, I got 8 hours of screen on time. With dual SIM full 5G, going out, taking photos, watching a concert, browsing Taobao, and chatting on WeChat, I got... Okay, now let's get to the part that's been hyped the most this time. The AI-powered light office productivity features. The Atomic Workstation, 元素工作机, is genuinely useful, and AI does bring real substance here, though some features are still on the way via OTA updates, so I have to set that expectation up front. Let's start with the Atomic Workstation. A lot of brands are doing multitasking on foldables, but fundamentally it's just split screen. 2 apps side by side, and that's it. Vivo has split multitasking into 2 modes. One is serial mode, up to 5 apps on one screen, with one main app taking up most of the screen and 4 smaller assistant windows lined up on the side. All of them run and display simultaneously without overlapping each other. Great for a scenario where you're focused on one main app while keeping others running in the background. This existed in the previous generation too, and it's the mode I use most and find most useful. The other is parallel mode, which is new this time. Up to 4 apps can run simultaneously on one screen, all windows displayed together, and their sizes can be freely adjusted. Switching between the 2 modes is also very simple. You can lightly fold the device, swipe with a sticky note gesture, or manually tap to switch. You can also save your own app combinations, and next time you can open them directly from the home screen without having to find each app individually. I've put my own saved combinations right on my home screen, see? And now you can also open them this way from the taskbar area. Let me share a few scenarios I find particularly practical. First, when traveling. 小红书, the Dianping, Maps, plus the built-in Notes app. When you see something delicious, drag it straight into your notes, then navigate directly to it. No need to make a separate travel guide or keep switching back and forth between apps. Second, when shopping, you can open Taobao, JD, Pinduoduo, and Douyin all at once to compare prices across platforms. I've recently been scrolling Douyin a lot to learn from other people's makeup videos. While reading through comments where people summarize product recommendations, I can directly search for the same product on Taobao at the same time. I find this genuinely very convenient. No longer like before, where I had to take a screenshot first, finish watching, and then go back and forth searching separately. Third, for work. Tencent Meeting, the Notes app, WeChat, and file management. During a meeting, you can listen and take notes at the same time while still being able to reply to WeChat messages or send files instantly. I think this is genuinely great for office workers. There's also an even faster way to open these, voice commands. You just say, 小伟, then say something like, open Tencent Meeting, Taobao, JD, and Douyin. And look, it can now open 4 apps at once through voice command. Previously, it could only open 2 at a time. This was updated just a couple of days ago. This X Fold generation also has another very practical feature, desktop mode. The previous generation had a similar screencasting ability, but this time it works the other way. Connect the phone to a monitor and it instantly turns into a mini desktop computer. You can use the phone itself as a trackpad. See that? You can also connect a keyboard or mouse. If you don't connect one, this works too. Let's watch a video, for example. But there's one issue. Since my monitor doesn't have built-in speakers, the phone essentially becomes just the processing unit and has no way to output audio. If you don't have external speakers, it'll just be silent, unless you use a TV, which does support audio output. See, you can tap it over to trackpad mode. Honestly, I think this is quite useful if working directly on the phone isn't very convenient and there's a monitor available, say at a hotel. Connecting to it works quite well. This is genuinely a practical feature. There's also the AI file manager. For all those random files people send you on WeChat, finding them later is a nightmare. The file manager here borrows from a computer file management logic, automatically sorting files by source app and file type. Files received via WeChat can be found just by tapping the WeChat source category, much clearer compared to, say, Xiaomi's system. There's also an AI meeting assistant, which is genuinely useful for working professionals. I used to work at Dell and could have up to 800 meetings in a single day. Even when I wasn't speaking, I still had to stay alert and listen the whole time. Honestly, it felt like all that time was wasted since a lot of meeting content is just filler talk. Now, you just press the side button and it starts recording immediately. The AI will automatically separate speakers by role, identifying who said what without you having to manually tag anyone. I think a colleague's demo of this feature was particularly clear and easy to understand, worth checking out. It even distinguished around 6 or 7 different speaking voices, similar in complexity to the cast in a period drama. You can also see the recorder feature now supports split screen after the OTA update, along with Vivo's own cross-device file transfer and its cloud transferability with Apple devices, meaning even if your other device isn't nearby, you can still transfer files. There's also AI drag and drop and global search, among many other features. Since time is limited, I won't go through each one individually here. But I do think all these features exist to make daily life a bit more convenient and simpler, right? If you don't want to use them, you don't have to, but it's good that the option exists. That said, personally, I did notice 2 small issues worth mentioning. One is that background app audio all gets mixed together. Since my wife works as a TV host, I used to be a bit of an audio purist about this. I feel the correct logic should be that whichever app you're currently actively using should take priority for audio playback. Though a friend of mine pointed out that some people might actually want to listen to music while in a meeting, or while gaming, they might want to check a strategy guide with 2 audio sources playing simultaneously. For them, that setup works just fine. The other issue is that apps pinned on the side aren't updated in real time. You have to manually switch to them to refresh and see if there are new messages. That said, lately I've genuinely just been lying in bed with a bunch of apps open, and a quick flick of my pinky finger switches between them easily. It's honestly quite convenient and low effort. For gaming, I only tested one title briefly, so take this as just a rough reference. At room temperature of 27 degrees Celsius, on the highest graphics setting at 60 FPS, the average frame rate over half an hour was 59.3 FPS, with a maximum temperature of only 40.6 degrees Celsius. Overall, gameplay felt very smooth, with only occasional frame rate fluctuations during combat scenes. Most of the heat concentrated on the camera module half of the device, while the area you actually hold barely warms up at all. I think that's a genuinely good design choice. On the software side, I've used this unit for a bit over a week, and performance has been completely smooth for me, though some people in my group chat have mentioned experiencing lag, which may be related to specific usage habits or background tasks, but I personally haven't run into that. Overall, daily use heat management felt fine to me, though taking photos or recording video will definitely heat the phone up quickly. That's just unavoidable given the surface area and internal stacking constraints of a foldable design. But it never gets to the point of being uncomfortably hot to hold. At most, it's warm. And honestly, pretty much every phone behaves this way in the current season. As long as it doesn't lag or throttle, I don't consider it a problem. On durability, this generation supports full IP rating protection, along with resistance to freezing temperatures down to -20 degrees Celsius. The motor is an X-axis linear motor, though I feel the haptic feedback is a touch on the weaker side. Honestly, this phone barely has any real issues across the board. The hardware specs are basically maxed out, and combined with an overall upgraded experience this generation, genuinely qualifies as a foldable with no real weaknesses. I think this year, it's as if every phone manufacturer agreed amongst themselves to go all in on AI. Why is that? Here's how I understand it. Hardware improvements have basically plateaued. Everything that could be pushed has been pushed, and the gap between brands keeps shrinking. The only thing that could realistically create separation between brands now is AI. And this isn't just about adding one more feature, it represents a genuinely fundamental shift. Where before you'd open your phone and tap an app, in the future you might just speak a sentence and the phone handles the task for you. You might say, I don't really need that, what does it matter to an average person? But it can save you a lot of small, repetitive, time-wasting tasks. You've probably also noticed, when scrolling through videos these days, comments often float by saying things like, AI really is incredibly useful now. That's a signal in itself. People are already feeling its convenience in daily life. Those of us making content feel it too. Watching peers around us start using AI to write scripts, design covers, and handle post-production, it's hard to pretend there's no pressure. You're basically forced to learn it quickly yourself. The same logic applies to phone manufacturers. Whoever gets users to build the habit first may end up a step ahead. But at this stage, no one's nailed it perfectly yet. Everyone's still figuring it out. I do think the overall direction is right, though. So, bringing this back to the X Fold, features like the Atomic Workstation, AI cross-window drag and drop, and the Meeting Assistant, you really need to think about whether they genuinely help you. If they do, then it's worth it. If they don't, then to you, it's just a fairly ordinary foldable phone. Whether this is truly a must-have for you really comes down to whether you actually need these capabilities. But at a starting price of 7,999 yuan, in the current climate of skyrocketing memory prices, that's honestly a pretty fair price. Okay, thanks everyone for your time. If you enjoyed this content, remember to like, share, and subscribe. There was just so much to cover that I had to rush to get this published early, so if I missed anything, feel free to leave a comment and ask. See you all in the next video. Bye!